And welcome. This is the Breaking Free Show, and my name is Marilyn Shannon, and I'm so happy to have all of you here today. We're going to have a great show in store. This is last week's show this week. So our guest last this week couldn't make it last week because they had a power outage in Colombia, but we're so delighted to have him back again because he's such a great guest. So we're happy to have him, and I'm going to introduce him in a minute. But before I do, I want to say hi to Amnon.
Hello,
How
how are
are
you?
you?
I'm fine. You?
I'm good. I'm good. You doing all right? Everything good?
Doing everything's fine.
Everything. You had a good week so far.
So far, everything is
Good.
fine.
Good. Amnon is our illustrious producer, and we're so happy to have be in his space and be doing this show. I've had a very interesting couple of days. So, my daughter and son-in-law launched a new business over the weekend, a knishes. So I don't know if anybody that's ever
Oh,
had a knish, but it's like a heavy dough with different fillings, and we did it. They did it at the local market, and it was fabulous. Hello, who's on the phone?
Oh, hi, this is Susie Nelson.
Hey, Susie. Can I help? Oh,
Susie, are you calling
are
to
you
participate or are you calling to listen?
I'm calling to listen.
good?
Um, can you not listen on the website?
Okay,
Yeah,
I just saw the instructions that said call. Thanks.
Just go to nissancommunications.com and click on. Nope, she's gone.
all right. So anyway, they launched this great new business, and it was very exciting, and we're happy, and it's just this great item, and they have it stuffed with all kinds of great stuff. So one day he's going to come on and tell you all about it. But in the meantime, everybody that's listening, please feel free to sign into our chat. You can do that right near the video. Just put your name, your nickname is fine if you don't want to put your regular name, your real name. And any time during the show, if you have a question, you're welcome to call in to 919-518-9773. Or you can Skype in with us to computers 2, that's the number 2, K voice. So we're on with the show. So how many of you can say that you have a favorite Hindu monk? Well, I can. I have this really great friend, excuse me, who is a former Hindu monk and brilliant at that. And Jamie McConaughey was on our show a couple of weeks ago and just did phenomenally. Just there's so much to talk about when somebody is so open and free and just understands. And so Jamie was in the monastery, I think, for about 11 years or so. Took him probably about 3 years to get into the monastery to go through the process, and several years to leave it, going through the process of leaving the monastery. Not because they wouldn't let him go, but because of what he needed to do personally, the work he needed to do personally to make sure that that decision was the decision that he wanted to make. And why did he want to leave the monastery? I asked him on the last show. Well, the reason was because he wanted to be experiencing love. He wanted to be in love. And what a beautiful reason, right? So I want to introduce Jamie. Hey, Jamie.
Hi, Marilyn,
How?
and hi, everyone. Thanks for turning up. I'm really happy to be here, very excited. Looking forward to this interview. I always love chatting with you, Marilyn. I think you're such a great host. You're such a lovely energy.
Oh, thank you. I think you said that the last time. That's good. Say it.
I,
Keep saying it.
yeah, well, every time I see you, I have to say it.
Thanks. Thanks. I appreciate it very much. And you're really great to talk to, and it's always fun. And I'm looking forward to seeing where we will go and what we will learn together. So, so Jamie, let's start with how you we ended the last time, which was about you're leaving the monastery because of wanting to experience love. So, could you go into a little bit more of that?
Yeah. Well, I just want to clarify here what we mean by love. In the monastery, I had lots of love. I mean, I was had love all around me, and love coming out of me all over the place. But it was different kind of love, obviously. Um, the love that I wanted to experience was kind of a bit more like romantic love, you know, falling in love with a beautiful woman, possibly leading to a family and children. These were the kinds of feelings and desires which were growing stronger and stronger in me, which ultimately led me to making that decision to leave the monastery. So it was not that I had a lack of love, because I think anyone would agree with me that when you're on a spiritual path, when you're connected with your spiritual source, you are connected to love, because that is your essence as a spiritual being, love, pure love. So I think it's a different thing. It's a different expression of the same love when you want to relate to another human being on a more physical level and a more emotional level, and that kind of intimate romantic love. It's a different expression of the love that you have within you.
So this love that you clarified, the difference between, let's say, the spiritual, godly, divine entity, all that kind of stuff, that kind of love, as well as opposed to being able to demonstrate your love through touch, through feel, is different. Why is there such a pull to that? Because I would think, now of course, I can experience both being on this side of the monastery, right? But for you, why was the pull towards that? I don't know if I want it different and where you needed to go, as opposed to being fulfilled with where you were.
Yeah, well, I mean, that question really, there are lots of different levels to answering that question. On one hand, I think when an individual feels compelled to become a monk in the first place, to enter into a monastic life, it's a very extreme way of life. It's not the average, not average person does that. So when you do become a monk, you're consciously saying to yourself that you are going to kind of reject the physical impulses that humans have towards physical intimacy with a member of the opposite sex, or a member of the same sex. Can be either way. But yeah, basically, as humans, we have a basic physiological need for reproduction, for physical intimacy, for that closeness on a physical level and also an emotional level. And that's a totally natural process that we should all embrace and accept. But for those individuals who feel compelled to follow monastic lifestyle, these people have to understand and accept that that's not really an option for them. And it sounds really unnatural for most people, but for somebody who's ready to become a monk, it's the most natural thing in the world. It's the most natural step, because when you have that calling to become a monk, to follow the monastic path, your desire for God, for union with God, is so overwhelming and so great that your desire for physical intimacy kind of pales in comparison to the urge you have to become one with God. It's very difficult for somebody who does not share that same desire for monastic life to understand that. I understand it totally, because I went through that process. And at the time, that was the best thing for me, and it was the right thing for me in the moment. But however, and then this is where other levels to answer this question comes in, karma is involved in these things. And sometimes the karma that you have, which drives you or pushes you, or we could say pulls you towards relationships with other people, towards other experiences in your life, basically. For me, I felt that a lot of my karma in this present life is to do with physical intimacy and relationships on a physical and emotional level with another person. And that karma was very sort of strong. I use the word heavy because I mean to say that it was very significant and that it needed to be processed. And that karma was pulling me um, towards leaving the monastery, basically. And that was what I followed my intuition, my heart's, impulse to follow that
So
karma.
Jamie, I want to interrupt you for a second, if I may, because this is very interesting. So you're saying that your karma is to have that intimacy, right? So what about going into the monastery was part of fulfilling that karma? What did you have to learn or go through or understand by going into the monastery?
Well, I discovered my divinity. That was the main overarching experience or reason why I went into the monastery. I discovered my divinity. Before that, I was searching, I was looking, I was doing different spiritual things. I did meditation a lot. I would go to various retreats, various kind of gurus and teachers and stuff. And I was learning little bits and pieces as I went along. But it was in the monastery where I truly discovered my divinity. And I discovered that God is a living energy. It's a living intelligence that dwells within you. And it's a personality that you can relate to on a very intimate, close level. That was basically what I discovered by going into the monastery. If I hadn't gone into the monastery, I may not have made that connection. Maybe I may have done in some other way. I mean, who knows? But I know for sure that was a huge kind of, yeah, part of my karma, basically, to come so close to God in the experiences I had in that monastery. And those experiences I carry with me now all the time. And in any moment I want, I can go back and connect with that divine living essence that's with me all the time. Um,
So okay, so I want to understand, and I can and I am really grasping this idea of this living God, this living personality, this living essence, this way that you, even just the way you just turned your head, it gave me the feeling like, of course, God is like, is everywhere, right? It's a living energy. Now, you said that your karma for your life is to experience this intimacy with a woman, basically, right? Am I right?
yeah,
So, do you
yeah,
believe things happen for a reason?
yes, of
Okay.
course,
So,
of course.
okay. Good. So, when you talk about things happening for a reason, the understand, like, how is going into the divinity and realizing that God is this living energy entity, how is that connected to your fulfilling your life's passion prophecy by being intimate with a woman? How was that your path? How
Mm.
did your path start by going into the ministry?
Well, I think um, to be an effective um, tool or instrument in this life, the first thing, the most important thing anyone should do is discover and connect with their spiritual source within them, their divinity within them. Whatever name you want to give that, if you want to call that God or spirit, universe, or nature, it doesn't matter. But that's the first thing that anyone should do, because when you do that, you've got this foundation, this base. You're completely fearless. You have access to infinite strength. You have access to intuitive knowledge that can guide you in any situation. When you've got that with you, you can go through life like like a like a superhero or whatever, and you can help people. You can help the world. You can help those around you in your family. And at the moment, my where I am now in my life, I sort of feel like this divine connection I have within me is guiding me towards making some kind of relationship with someone. I mean, I've been having different relationships with women since I left the monastery, and like anyone, making mistakes as well and learning as I go. But each time I'm getting closer and closer towards something which is truly in line with myself and my divinity. And so I think that I don't know what the future holds, but I like to think that I will be able to find somebody who is really in harmony and compatible with the divine connection I have within myself. And that, I mean, I think we will make an amazing team, right, to help the world and to serve the world. So that's kind of how I see where my path is going. But in addition, I would also say that my divinity, the divinity within me, it knows what it has in store for me. I don't. So I just trust its guidance and I just go with the flow. And I have no idea where I'm going to end up. But wherever I end up, I know that that's where my divinity wants me to be for some purpose of being the instrument to express that in the world.
Mhm. Yeah, I love your saying the divinity within you. I think that's the way you have, excuse me, of describing this spirituality, this divinity, is you have a way of describing it that makes perfect poetic sense. You just have a way and I mean, I think that's part of your karma, part of your mission in life, your purpose is to be able to have had that experience, then to be able to come and really share a human perspective on something divine, something that maybe a human may not have so much connection to, so many ways of touching upon it, but you have. And I mean, you've been somewhere where a lot of, most of us have not, and on a living everyday basis. So, and you have this great way of describing it. So it's really so fascinating. Before we go on, Chris has a question that I want to ask you. And also, I just want to remind everybody out there to please feel free to connect with us in our chat. You can put your name, nickname next to the video and take part in the chat window, or you can call us if you have a landline or a cell phone, 919-518-9773. Or you can contact us through Skype now if you like, computers, that's plural, the number 2K voice. You can Skype in with us and ask questions. We'd love to have you from wherever you are and however you can come in. That would be great. So Chris's question is, so can you return to the monastery as a monk at any later date in your life, at any stage in your life? Can you return if you want to?
That's a good question. Technically, no. The official rules of that particular monastery are, once you break the lifetime vows, you cannot go back and retake them. That's the kind of technical regulation. However, having said that, I know that the monastery and the monks in the monastery are so totally in line at one with the divine. And the divine is always flexible, compassionate, unpredictable. You never know. You can never know. Anything can happen when you're working hand in hand with the divine. Mm-hmm. So the rules of that particular monastery are that if you do break your vows, then you've basically said, okay, that's it for this lifetime until next lifetime.
Oh my God, could you just repeat that again? You just said about, when you're working with the divine, you never know what's really going to happen.
That's exactly it.
That's exactly it.
That's been my experience all through my life in the monastery and since I left the monastery. When you are consciously working with the divine in your life, the divine is just, she's so flexible, she's so funny, she's got a great sense of humor, and just when you think that what you're doing is really spiritual and on the right track, she will suddenly turn the tables on you and completely unpredictable, flip you around, throw you up in the air, spin you around a bit, and you'll come back and land on your ass and start laughing.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly what I do.
it
You're describing my life. Yeah, I land
yeah,
on my ass and laugh.
that's it. And what better way? What better way to trust and accept the divine will, right? You know, sometimes you get a bit bruised, being treated a bit rough sometimes, but that's just your karma. But if you know the divine, if you have a personal relationship with her regularly every day, you know that she's just like having fun with you.
And you use, I think Amnan's got a question, but you use her a lot. So this divine energy you refer to as her.
I use her. I refer to her when I want to talk about her active side. As a feminine energy, she's very active in she interacts with you when she's in her feminine energy, and she participates and has a hand in things in the feminine form. As a masculine form, he is much more transcendental, much more like Shiva sitting in meditation on the mountain. That is another side to the divine, which is equally just as powerful, but it's a different personality.
I'm not.
Well, no, I just had a comment. I was going to say maybe she will let you back into the monastery, but I'll bet you the monastery heads
Monks.
or whatever the big guys don't want you to go back because they're afraid that you're going to ruin the other ones.
Yes, yeah. I'm going to corrupt them all with
Corrupt
my
them, yeah.
with my worldly desires.
So,
Yeah.
the monastery, I guess, had a lot of masculine energy, right?
It's very much an equal balance.
It was an equal balance.
It's a good question actually, because the majority of the members of the community in the monastery are men. There is a smaller community of nuns, which is kind of a little bit separate, but they participate in the same activities. So in that sense, you could say it's kind of male dominated in that way, kind of bit like some of the traditional Hindu monasteries. But actually, the individuals themselves, each monk really has this nice balance of masculine and feminine energy, and that is what happens when you come close to God. You do get more of the equal balance between your masculine and feminine energy, and that expresses itself in your actions and the way you interact in the world.
Mm-hmm. I have this thought that you were here, it was mostly that male energy, and now your part of that karma is to experience more of that female energy for you. I see you doing a lot of work around this. I see you being this middleman between the expressing what we may feel but not be able to express, what we don't know yet, but once you tell us, but once you share with us as a human, coming out of that experience, we can understand and gravitate to. I see you doing a lot of work on this because you have a great handle on the verbiage and how to put it, how to explain this divinity, this energy in ways that is just perfect. Like I'm listening, I'm sitting here and I'm laughing because you're saying exactly what I have felt in many ways, but wasn't always able to explain. So I really appreciate how you do it. And there's another question here. Chris wants to know, what is the difference between Mother Earth and the Divine Mother?
Well, I would say Mother Earth is an expression, a manifestation of the Divine Mother. Divine Mother manifests in every nook and cranny of the universe. Mother Earth is like one of her incarnations. You can almost say it as an incarnation. It's like a life. It's like we as humans, we are born, we live, we express our divinity, and then we die. The planet, the Earth, is also like that in a sense. It was born, it lives, it's full of life, and eventually it will die. So it's just another being, another creature of the divine.
Just a piece.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a
I mean,
piece.
we call her Mother Earth because she has a lot of those characteristics of a mother, giving, bearing fruit, sustaining us, caring for us. It's pretty sad that the large majority of the human race are totally ignorant of that, and they end up destroying it. Um,
So there's nothing. So as I'm listening to, and I really do think I understand this. Really, there's I can't be sure of anything.
Why exactly? Why bother trying to be sure of anything? I mean, if you know the divine, the divine is sure of everything. The divine, your inner self, your higher self, is totally perfect, without need of improvement or change. It does not need any extra information or knowledge. It does not need to improve or grow. The higher self, your divinity, is perfect as it is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you connect with that, what else do you need?
Right.
You don't need any other information about how to do things. But what will happen is that you don't need intellectual curiosity. You don't need to satisfy your intellectual curiosity. But what will happen is that divinity will just guide you. It will give you impulses and directions that will lead you and making the decisions you need to make.
So the connection to all of that is with our creativity.
Yeah, but that's another way to say it. Yeah, I would agree with that, Marilyn. Yeah, I think creativity has other connotations to it, like kind of expressing things, creating things. But it comes from the same source. It comes from the same thing. And, it comes from that divinity that's within you, your higher self, the universal energy that's your source. That is the source of all creativity, right?
Right.
So creativity is a manifestation or an expression of the divinity within you.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is so fascinating. I mean, because really, we've spent so much time, so many of us, worrying about this, worrying about that. We really don't have any control over it. I mean, for Jamie to go, even though there has been a rule, maybe there has been a rule forever and ever and ever that he cannot go back in, but that rule can change at any point in time.
Who knows?
Right? Who knows? Who knows? Right? So you just go along. So how do you live your life? Like, you go along, and what you listen to, what you do, what? How do you know what you're hearing? What do you do?
Whoa, that's a really good question. Well, I do several things, and I have to say, first, I would say that I don't have this down perfectly. I'm still learning as I go along, and I'm making mistakes also. But I do have a few things. Basically, the most important thing is a daily relationship with my divinity, daily. And I do that in the different ways. One is every evening I do like a kind of meditative prayer to connect with, in a personal way, I connect with Divine Mother in the evening, or Christ. Sometimes it's Christ, sometimes it's Krishna. But anyway, it's the same divinity, and I connect with that on a personal level every evening. That just energizes me. It just lets me realize, puts everything into perspective. It helps me to understand and realize that I'm divine, by my own nature is divine, and that this is just one of many incarnations. So without that, if I neglect that, and sometimes it's happened that I didn't do that, and if I go through several days of doing that, I find everything goes out of whack. So it helps me to keep me on the straight and narrow, so to speak. But in addition to that, during the day, I'm also doing things to connect with with my divinity, like trying to live in the present moment as much as possible. Because when you're in the present moment, you can feel the divine presence around you all the time. And she guides you and helps you to make choices, make decisions and stuff like that. So that's what I'm doing. At the same time, I'm trying to balance my human nature, my emotions, my needs, my desires. Um, because I sometimes get really strong desires and emotions, like really strong. Sometimes I lose consciousness of my divinity because I'm overwhelmed by emotion and desire. And I have to keep like checking myself and kind of bringing myself back again. And I'm trying to balance it, you know. I left the monastery because I had a desire of something that I myself want to do, and I have to balance that with what I feel is the Divine Mother's kind of purpose for me, her will, if you like. So I'm trying to balance her divine will with my own ego's desire of what I want. You see what I mean? Sometimes they clash and they go separate ways, and that causes a bit of suffering. But when I can get them more or less to kind of overlap, then I'm more in harmony, and I feel much more at peace.
So, do you think on some level is your karma telling you you've been chosen in some way? Not that we all are not chosen for something, but do you believe that you have been chosen to bring this to out here somehow, this information?
Well, that's something I'm learning at the moment, because when I left the monastery, honestly, all I knew was that I wanted a life. I wanted to fall in love and have a family and experience that side of life. That's all I knew. I had no idea what I was going to do, what job I would do, how I would serve the world. So the last 6 years, I've been kind of discovering that more and more and kind of refining it and kind of changing it, modifying it. And yeah, I think you're right. I'm personally myself, I'm getting closer and closer to seeing how I can serve the world based on where I've come from, you know, my spiritual connection, balanced with this funny urge that I've got to fall in love. And I can see, yeah, I'm sort of seeing that how that's working. I think it's very important, and I feel it as a strong calling at the moment to educate people to understand that spirituality goes hand in hand with being a human and having all your desires and stuff, having that all mixed together. That's what spirituality is. And because in the monastery, I experienced amazing, blissful, transcendental states out of this world. But at the same time, we were taught to appreciate and accept our humanness, our body, our sexual desires, our emotions, and put it all together and harmonize it all. So I sort of feel like I would like to educate people in doing that, because I feel a lot of people on the spiritual path find that difficult to bring the human and the spiritual together into one. Often I see people separating them too much, being kind of spiritual and meditating and stuff, but then again they're afraid of their sexuality, or you know, they can't bring it together, and so they're not integrated, and so they're not really being an effective instrument for their divinity. So yeah, I kind of feel that at the moment that's where I think my purpose is going, but who knows? Maybe tomorrow the Divine Mother will send me off to do something completely different.
Right, right. So, Tom, I guess the question is, so the harmonic relationship between the human and the spirituality, is that human being in the heart? Because you can't do it from the head. To blend the two, you can't do it from the head.
I think you have to integrate everything. You know, I personally don't say come from the heart. I don't say come from the head. I don't say come from this or that. It's an integration of everything all together, because you need the head. You need the mind. It can be an effective and very powerful tool to use your mind. Um, but and then equally, if you're with the heart, if you're too much in the heart, then you can sometimes mix that up with emotions, because the heart can be intuition or it can be emotion, and the two are very different. And you can, I think there's a danger of kind of getting confused sometimes with what you're feeling in your heart. So personally, I just say as an integrated whole. So for me personally, I focus on my divine presence, and that expresses itself in the whole, in the mind, in the heart, in the senses, in the body, in everything. And I bring it all together from the perspective of my divinity.
So I know we have lots of people who probably want to know, because I want to know. So what was it like when you first left the monastery? What was your biggest shock of being out in the world?
Wow. The obsession with devices, electronic devices, that for me was, well, I mean, there were lots of shocks. Honestly, there were lots and lots of shocks. But let's say the first shock I had was when I left the monastery, I pretty much went immediately to the train station to catch the train back to where my mum was living at the time. And my first impression when I went into the train station was that, first of all, there was a confusion of impulses coming from everyone, and everybody seemed to me to be very confused. Like, I remember standing waiting for the train on the platform, and there were lots of different people around me, and I could feel their impulses coming from them, and they're all so confused. You know, they were like, I could feel like they're worried about what somebody said to them. They're worried about some business meeting. They didn't know what their spouse was thinking of them, or if they could get this relationship with a boy or something. And it expresses in their body language really strongly. You can see it. You can read it in their face. These confusion of thoughts going around everybody, and that was just like, I was just like, God, everybody's so confused.
Can you still see that and sense it and feel it? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I restrain it a lot more because I do find it a bit disturbing. So I kind of shut it down most of the time unless I need it. But yeah, and so that was pretty overwhelming, the first moment. And then when I actually got onto the train, all I could hear were electronic devices, like mobile phones, people talking on mobile phones, people listening to iPods and stuff like that. And everybody seemed totally immersed and engrossed in this little electronic gadget. They didn't seem to be aware of what was happening around them, of the trees going past in the train, of the people who smile as they walk past. Well, I tried to smile at people as I walked past, and people just kind of didn't look at me. So I was like, God, why is everybody so self-absorbed? Like, why is that happening? So that was the next thing that kind of impressed on me. And then I arrived. I had to go through the London Underground, and that was just, whew, a chaotic mix of strange energies. I remember seeing like some young semi-clad punks hanging out on the platform with strange hairstyles, and I was like, my God,
while you were in the monastery, you didn't read a newspaper, listen to radio, watch TV, anything like that, right?
A little bit, not much,
bit.
but we had, there was a newspaper that came once a week, so we could follow the news. Once in a blue moon, we watched TV, but apart from that, it was very minimal. Yeah,
very minimal. So how long did it take you to actually go through this integration?
I'm still going through it, really. I think, I think we're all still going through it. I think everybody suffers the same kind of thing. Maybe we don't realize it, but we still suffer this confusion of stimuli coming in from all sides. We all suffer from that. We just kind of, we've just developed various coping mechanisms to shut it out. Some coping mechanisms not so helpful, but yeah,
I
I mean,
really agree with you. I so agree with you there. I would never have normally have said that, but I think we all come from some divinity. We all come from divinity, right? So coming from some blissful heaven somewhere or something, and maybe the monastery is an example of some of that you can experience, but we've all come from some place like that, and that's exactly what part of our lesson, maybe our whole lesson, I don't know.
well,
you know
yeah, it's like you can imagine that you're constantly surrounded by this hodgepodge of mix of confusing sensory stimuli. You're like that all your life, so you become kind of, you're not really aware of it, but it's there. It's because I was in the monastery, and in the environment there, it's so kind of pure, and the vibration is so focused and yeah, pure, that when I went out into the outside world, I was so keenly aware of this mix of energy that's always around us. And it's just sad that so many people, they're just not aware of that. And it's causing a lot of stress, physical disease, emotional problems and stuff. And people just aren't aware of it, or a lot of people aren't aware of it anyway.
Right. Yeah, I would love for people just to see, just to hear, to listen to how they are showing up. Because sometimes how we show up is not how we think we're showing up, or our intention of how we're showing up. And not that it's bad. I just think it would be a really great thing, because sometimes people don't realize what is possible if they just knew what they were doing or not doing. The vibes they were giving off, the questions they were asking, the way they held their body, their body language, just whatever, just so that we really could see ourselves in some way, not to be critical, just to be able to integrate ourselves with ourselves.
Absolutely. And, this is part of the process, I think, of awakening to your divinity within you. You become more conscious of these things, more aware of them. You're no longer like a zombie just walking around, sleepwalking in the world, unconscious. You become aware of every aspect of yourself. Gradually, slowly, you become more aware of it. And at first, that's not a pretty sight. Sometimes you have realizations of what an idiot you can be sometimes. But that's the step in towards transformation, because
Right.
you have to become aware before you can change. And
Absolutely.
that's what happens when you become more awakened, I think.
Right. So, what are you finding now with being in intimate relationships or looking for intimate relationships? What are you finding about that energy and that relationship, or what have you learned about? I'm asking you too many questions about the same thing, but I guess my questions are taking me deeper and deeper to the question I really want to ask you. So, what is it you're finding about intimacy between a man and woman? For some it's a woman and a woman, for some it's a man and a man. But what are you finding?
Oh, I love it. I love it. Physical intimacy. It has to be in the right context. There has to be love involved. There has to be some kind of connection. Um, it's interesting because sometimes physical intimacy, or the chemistry that you have between a person, really has no bearing on whether or not that person is right for you, because the chemistry in an intimate relationship is purely chemistry. You can get kind of all romantic about it and sort of feel that it's love at first sight or whatever, and there's fireworks going off. But that's literally just your physiology, your physiochemistry, or whatever you want to call it. Because then later down the line, you can realize that no, this is not a good match. This is a big mistake. We have fantastic sex. You know, it's like the bedroom is steaming and rocking, but then you realize it's a complete mistake of a relationship, and there's no way the two of you are compatible, and you have to go your separate ways. So I'm learning all about that. I mean, I'm sure. I think, at my age now, I'm a bit behind with all of that, so I have to catch up. That doesn't mean to say I'm trying to have sex with as many people as possible, but I do need to catch up and kind of learn a lot of those things. And that's what I found, is that the physical chemistry, fireworks and stuff. If you feel that when you meet someone, that's great and enjoy it, but don't let that decide your lifetime commitment with the person. You know?
Yeah. And I know we're meant to be in some relationships. I mean, we're going to learn our greatest lessons in a relationship, whether it's the ones that are intimate, whether it's colleagues, whether it's, siblings, whatever it, coworkers, whatever it is, on any level. We're meant to learn our biggest lessons by being in a relationship. And it's interesting because, you think of a monk just sitting on top of a mountain, not in relationships. So I guess, and I used to think that a monk made it to the top of the mountain because they already figured it all out.
So you have
And
another-
Well,
yeah,
you know what, Marilyn? It's interesting you said that, because I think that is a common misconception of a lot of people, is that, on the one hand, I think I agree with what you say, that when somebody is called to lead a monastic life, really isolated, like a hermit way of life, if they're genuinely, sincerely called to do that from a spiritual impulse and not from some dysfunctional psychological hang-up, then it is really because they've been through all of that in previous lives, and they no longer need to learn those lessons, so they are ready to just give themselves body, mind, and spirit to divine unity and consciousness. And that's what happens when somebody genuinely wants to become a monk. I say genuinely because I think people often become monks for some other dysfunctional reason, which is not healthy. And in addition to that, in a community, monastic community, you're not escaping intimate relationships. Certainly, there's no physical relationship, or there shouldn't be, if it's a good monastery. But you're not escaping the relationship between, communal relationships. So you have to deal with intimate emotional and psychological relationships. So you're also learning. I mean, that was in the monastery where I was. We were very close-knit kind of community, and we had to deal with a lot of personalities and that kind of stuff. So I learned a lot about human relationships from that perspective.
right. So Chris is asking, do you, as a coach, as a life coach, spiritual coach, what do you tell your clients about technology?
Well, it's, as you know, Marilyn, with the coaching process, it's not so much about telling someone what to do.
Right.
It's about, asking them questions so that they identify what they need to do for themselves.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend exploring the line that, becoming aware that being so wrapped up in electronic devices can really overstimulate your mind, your mental activity, overstimulate it. That means that you can become so fixated in it that it makes it difficult for you to sleep, for example, because your mind is overstimulated. It makes it difficult for you to live in the present moment because your mind is overstimulated. Your thoughts are carrying you away from the present moment. So that means that your thoughts are carrying you away from your awareness of your divinity, your divine connection. So that's the problem, I think, for electronic devices. As always, moderation is the word here. I personally, myself, I've learned, I mean, when when I came out of the monastery, I was so fascinated by electronic devices that I did completely the opposite of what my spiritual training would suggest. I really immersed myself in electronic devices. I do find them so fascinating, but now I'm coming back to the balance again. It's kind of my swinging back to the balance because I realize the effect it has. It distracts me from my divinity, and it causes that suffering because of that. So what I do now is in the evenings, I always make sure that I have at least half an hour of no interaction with electronic devices before I start my prayers and go to bed. Because if not, my mind is in a different place, in a different time. And I prefer to be in the half an hour, switch off my computer, my mobile phone and stuff. And then I just relax. I go sit out on the balcony in the evening and listen to the crickets and stuff at night and feel the fresh air breeze and just center myself in the present moment. And then I come to my shrine and I start my chanting and feel the presence of my divinity enwrapping me in its love. And I can't do that if I've just literally jumped off my mobile phone and into my prayers. That doesn't happen.
Right.
So, and then I can go to bed at peace. Like, I kind of go to bed, I go to sleep in the divine presence, and I then lose consciousness and wake up the next day refreshed and energized.
I'm going to start to do that. So everybody out here that's listening, watching, that talks to me, that knows me, I'm going to start doing something. I might not start with a half hour. I might start with 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But I'm going to leave it in a room, and I'm not going to have it connected at my hip and look at it all the time. I'm really going to start to do that. That's a great piece of advice. So Jamie,
Yeah.
I go on and on and on and on and on talk to you. And I want to ask you something. You're going to meet this woman one day, and you're going to have a family. What are your thoughts about children? Like your hopes, dreams. What are your thoughts about children?
Oh, well, I would love to have my own children for sure. I mean, I think that would go a big step towards completing my integration in terms of my spiritual growth as a human as well as a spiritual person. To have children and to be a father,
What,
and
and how would you father your children? Or how would you father a little girl? How would you father a little boy? Would there be a difference?
well, the details I think I would never know until the moment arrives. But as a kind of, I think as a general, in terms of my values and so on, one thing which is a very important value to me is an openness towards religions and spiritual traditions, and not to impose or bring up my children in one particular religion, because for me, I think that's a disaster for people to grow up thinking that they have to follow the rules and dogma of one particular authority. I personally I would like my children to grow up understanding that all religions are equally valid, and leave it to them to make the choice if they have a preference. If they have a preference for a particular religious path or spiritual tradition, let them make the choice. And I would encourage them to experience directly whatever it is they choose, and not just follow what people tell them about it. Because I think that spiritual experience should be personal experience, not just what people tell them. So I think that would be the kind of most important value I would have for my children. And other than that, I think it's quite difficult for me to know until it really happens in the moment. I would be guided by my intuition in that moment.
Fabulous. Well, I could go on and on and on and on and on and ask you questions, but one thing I will take away is this feeling. I don't know what you did. I don't know how you gave it to me, how I got it, but this feeling of this divinity being all around me. And I think it was the way you moved your head. I don't know. But I got the sense that I will take away with me, and I hope it will stay with me, forever. I know that things are in flux sometimes. You have this very strong feeling, and then all of a sudden it goes away. But it's this constant, ongoing vigilance and practice and awareness and being, being with people who feel the same way you do. I mean, sitting here now and listening to Jamie in so many ways of things that I could not articulate, but that he articulated for me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to say it the same way. Maybe not. Maybe I'll say it a different way. Maybe I'll never be able to say it. I'll just be able to hold it inside of myself. So I really thank you so much for your wisdom. So,
Well,
go ahead.
no, I just want to say I'm really happy that you can feel that. I mean, I just wanted to say that it is your spiritual essence, your divinity is always with you. It's everywhere. It surrounds you. It's within you. It's behind your thoughts. It's there watching you in every moment. It's just that we're not always conscious of it. So it's the fact that it's there makes it a whole lot easier to access it.
Yes. And the more conscious we are, the more we're aware of its presence.
Mm.
So tell everybody how to find you, what they will find, and what you want them to find.
Sure. Well, you can get in touch with me. Anyone can get in touch with me on my website, lifecoachinginterventions.com. I would be happy to engage in conversation if you want to talk about similar topics and stuff like that. I would recommend or encourage you to sign up for my free video series about practical spirituality. I've got three free videos. One is about using your spirituality at home. One is using your spirituality at work, and the other one is using your spirituality to enrich your relationships, which is something that I'm always practicing and discovering.
Yes, we are. That's what makes this so juicy and so good. It's not taking it personally. It's just welcoming in the information, the knowledge, the friendships, the relationships. A person who can articulate it in a way that you didn't, but maybe you can for somebody else. It's just how it goes, and it's a beautiful thing. So I want to thank you, Jamie, so much for coming on again and gracing our stage, the world, with your presence. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I'm getting ready to launch a coaching membership. Well, I'll only have 5 people in it. I have a lot of details, so if you're interested, please connect with me at MarilynShannon.com. I'll be happy to give you the information prior to its launch. And be looking at our website, MarilynShannon.com, where we're going to have items, my favorite things. There's going to be a whole section there of people that I've personally connected with that have, things that I think you would enjoy. So I have some clothing on there now that I wear, and that is from a lovely, lovely woman out in California, the United States. Check it out, and you'll see more, to follow. So with that, Jamie, I want to thank you once again for coming, and again, would love to have you back on because these conversations just get richer and richer. So thank you for that. You can see Jamie and me on Skywire on our Thursday Google Plus show where we're part of a panel.
Yes.
Huh?
If you want to follow some hot conversations, that's the place to go.
That is the place to go. So that's on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Google Plus. And with that, I want to thank you all for being here today and for sending us your energy because I felt it. I know you've all been listening hard, and I appreciate it very much. So it's been a pleasure to be here today, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Have a great week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCBVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.